After Canadian newspapers carried a report linking the murder of separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar to Prime Minister Modi, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Doval, the Canadian government has now come out to deny these claims. Canada's Privy Council office released a statement saying, and I quote, "The government of Canada has not stated, nor is it aware of evidence linking Prime Minister Modi, Minister Jaishankar and NSA Doval to any serious criminal activity within Canada. Any suggestion to the contrary is both speculative and inaccurate." India had strongly refuted the claims made in the newspapers, with External Affairs Ministry saying that the ludicrous statement should be dismissed with the contempt they deserve. Ties between the two nations have essentially collapsed ever since Canada accused the Indian government of being involved in the murder of Nijjar in 2023. India has continued to deny these allegations, calling them absurd and motivated. And in another move, Canada has rolled back extra screening for flyers to India just days after announcing the measure. The move was allegedly taken out of an abundance of caution. Let's now go across to my guests who are joining me in the studio at this point for this bulletin. Suresh Kumar Goel is a former ambassador, Pathikrit Payne is a geopolitical panelist. Pathikrit, I'll start with you at this point. I find it quite amusing how, the headlines literally scream Canada fact checks its own media over its own claims. But this embarrassing backpedaling, do you think it has some merit behind it? Because it seems that Canada has finally realized that it cannot put its money where its mouth it, and is being forced to backpedal on these claims.
Ritangshu, it is more like a great template of hunting with the hound and running with the hare. If you look at how the Canadian media operates, it is highly restricted, restrained, and controlled by the Canadian government. So it's highly unlikely that this kind of report can ever come out can be published by any Canadian publication without some kind of a support or a green signaling of it by the top establishment in the Canadian government. So it is very much, it's a classic template which we have seen during the Biden administration, also the duality of diplomacy. On one hand, the Department of Defense will say great things and want defense cooperation, and at the same time, the State Department will vilify you, will show that you are worse than Pakistan in hunger index, will say that there's so much of intolerance. So this duality of approach, which is often a little paradoxical, it might seem that Canadian government is taking a stand against the publication, but it is not so. These are two hands of the same establishment working in tandem, trying to create confusion. But let me tell you, if you look at the approach of the Five Eyes Alliance, if you look at the approach even of the Biden administration on the issue of Pannu and Nijjar, and of course the issue of Canadian government, it's all the same. So a government which has been complicit in literally threatening the diplomats of India in Canada, a government which calls terrorism as activism if it is targeted towards countries like India. I don't have much sympathy, or I am not very optimistic that, Canada has improved. Look, they have taken a stand against the newspaper. No, it is a larger plot that is being played. I was in another program in which there was this issue that is being raised that schools in Canada, certain schools are now asking students to write poetry on the 1984 Sikh riots. Can something like that happen without complicity and clear signaling from the Canadian government? The new generation is being poisoned with anti-India sentiments because they have very little idea as to how much the Sikh community and the Sikh gurus are respected in India. So my last point is this: we should be very careful. We should not be, driven and blown away by these statements to presume that suddenly the Canadians are improving. It is not so. And even if there is a change of regime in Canada next year, I don't see major foreign policy change happening in Canada so far as their approach towards India is concerned, because India has, and I strongly state it might sound politically incorrect, what Canada does, Canada is basically a wingman. Somebody else is directing them. You look at the way Canada approaches, or United Kingdom approaches, or Germany approaches, it is all being done by the big brother, which is south of Canada. You can understand which country it is.
Okay, so I wanted to go to Ambassador Goel for my next question, but since you mentioned a very tantalizing point, let me ask a follow-up question. Ambassador Goel, I'll beg your indulgence for 2 more minutes because I want to ask this follow-up question to Pathikrit. So if you're indicating, Pathikrit, that it's essentially Canada is acting as a proxy for the United States and as a front for the United States, because America has been having its same concerns over apparently the killing of US citizens by Indian operatives. Does that change with the Trump presidency, or at least does it present an opportunity for India to counter the so-called allegations of a deep state working behind the scenes, which with an intent to corner India geopolitically?
Well, we have to wait and watch how things change. This time, if you look at what Trump has stated, not just winning the election for the sake of running the government, he wants to go after these elements who are in the shadow and run the show. But we have to wait and watch. There was this particular article I want to mention. Shishir Gupta writes in Hindustan Times that the intelligence chief of India had told the CIA director that the only reason India is not targeting Pannu is because they believe that he works for Langley. Langley means CIA. So there might be a certain amount of restraint on the part of the Americans, because I think Trump is more sensitive, it seems to me, because he understands it is in the interest of United States to have a stable India. But to presume that they will just do away with everything, it's not going to happen. These are strong assets, big assets they have maintained and cultured against various countries who have refused to be compliant to the dictates of the United States or other countries, major powers of the global north. So to presume that we will not face anything like this in future, highly unlikely, because of the fact is that as you move towards a $5 trillion economy, you start challenging many of the things. You create your own alternate template. You defy them, and they don't take it lightly. So there will be pushbacks, there will be hits. You might see Trump trying to restrain. How much Trump will be successful in restraining many of these elements who are assets of big organizations within the United States who are not 100% accountable to the President of the United States, will we have to wait and watch.
All right, Pathikrit, thanks for those inputs. Let's go across to Ambassador Goel. Now, Ambassador Goel, my first question is, do you agree with Pathikrit's sentiments over whether there's a method to the seeming madness that's coming in from Canada at this point here? First, coming up with unsound, unsubstantiated allegations, and then very embarrassingly backpedaling on the same.
There is a method, but even look, we are all human beings. Even the Prime Minister or the President, they're all human beings, and sometimes they do make mistakes. But it's easier for us to backtrack on the mistakes we make, but not for a Prime Minister or a President to say that, yes, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm saying that with a specific purpose. Now, what happens, I think, is that as a diplomat, all I can say is that very often the things are done in the interest, in national interest, which are not clearly published. After there is an Official Secrets Act, and we all know that there are things which cannot be revealed immediately or which cannot be divulged. Now, the point really here is that diplomacy, secret services, intelligence gathering, etc., actions, etc., these are not just fiction, or these are not just imagination. They do take place, they happen sometimes, and these need to be done. After all, the wars are fought, and they are all fought in the interest of the national security. Having said this, I think what happened is that Trudeau, on the basis of certain encouragement from where I really wouldn't say it at all. Pathikrit is more at liberty to say things than I would ever be really. But the fact is that at somebody's encouragement, Trudeau began to really put things out in the media. And we all know that these kind of stories cannot come out unless there is a kind of encouragement, because even when you attribute certain information to known sources, we all know where those sources could be. So obviously there is an involvement of the official sources there, really, and it happened. But I think basically naming Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah, even if they believe that they had a conversation with somebody they knew, etc., intelligence sources, I think putting those names in the story was overreach. That was a mistake. And when the reaction from India came, they realized that it had been backtracked. They must have been told also by their partners who encouraged them earlier that, look, guy, I mean, we told you, but there is a limit to which you can go. Don't. So that has happened. That is point number one. Point number two, I seem to sense that we have a great confidence in Trump, the president-elect, that he's going to side with India. He may not. But after all, even if he's a great friend, he's the president of the USA. He has his own agenda. And knowing Trump, he's so unpredictable, and in fact, I call him volatile, really. He's so volatile that it is difficult to imagine that he will take rational decisions all the time. I'm being very, very frank here, really. And that's the reason everybody, even in the USA, is waiting and watching as to what he does. And number two, if he thinks that it is in his interest to discard somebody, even the closest friend, and he's choosing the team very carefully, having seen his style of functioning and speaking to various people in the USA, he will have no hesitation in discarding the people who are inconvenient to him. And I think we should remain aware of it. And we should continue to play our cards in the manner that our security must remain uppermost in our mind. And do not believe that because when Trump comes, he will take care of India. He will not. I mean, he may not, but the fact is that we can't depend on him forever, really. And even if he does, he will extract a price.
Yeah.
So we need to understand how to play this game. Canada has backtracked now, but Canada will continue to needle India in this relationship for some time to come. With this and maybe something else, whatever it is, they will continue to needle. It may stop at the elections when the new prime minister comes, but let us wait and see. Yes.
Ambassador Goel, my final question then. I mean, Pathikrit already touched upon this point, saying that, it's important for India not to see this as an olive branch being extended from Canada and then try and look at ways at restoring our diplomatic connections with them. Would you also agree that it's a bit too early to see this? I mean, look at the signs here. Obviously, the removal of the extra screening is one. This very public fact check is another. A few days ago, Justin Trudeau for the first time acknowledged the presence of Khalistani elements on Canadian soil and acknowledged them as a threat as well. But do you feel that these are still too late in terms of measures for confidence-building measures for India to look at restoring diplomatic ties with Canada?
To me, what he has done means nothing, really. I mean, acknowledging that the Khalistani elements on the soil, we all know that there is. But what is he doing to restrain them? Nothing. In terms of basically acknowledging that, yes, or reducing the number of screenings, how does it matter, really? I think we have to wait and see unless and until any major step is taken by Canada in terms of assuaging Indian sensitivities. I haven't seen that happening so far. Ritangshu. Short answer, but...
All right. Thanks a lot, Ambassador Goel, and also thank you so much, sir, and also thank you, Pathikrit, for joining me with those details here.